Mr.
Hello there.
Borchert.
How are you?
I'm fine. You know, you know what? I went the wrong road. I got mixed up with that new development road. I thought that was burnt swamp.
Everybody gets lost.
Wow.
We're like
but I'll
at
tell
the
you,
end
this
of
is
the
an
world.
amazing spot you have
This
here.
is our family property. I grew up here.
You grew up here, huh? Before we get into...
Are we recording?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah. Yep, I record.
You do all the editing and everything. So
I do.
You do all that. That's good. Yeah, this
So
is
anyway,
where I grew up.
let me just show this off a little bit.
Sure,
Do you
this
mind?
was no, not at all.
I want to show off your house. This is gorgeous.
Yeah, this is our
So was
property.
this? Did you have as a kid? Were you here? This
Yeah.
is what it looked like.
Yeah.
Not those houses in the background.
This was Harry Larrabee Sr.'s property.
Oh.
And that is Larrabee Swamp, a.k.a. Burnt Swamp. That's the new version of it. And that's Larrabee Swamp all the way over to Dickie Larrabee and Tommy Larrabee. He died. Tommy did.
Yeah.
And then that goes all the way over. Burnt Swamp or Larrabee Swamp.
That's burnt swamp there. Okay.
Yeah,
Why is it called that?
Well, there's a story behind that. After the Great Fire, now I don't know if this is true, after the Great Fire of 1846, I believe it was, they took all the debris and dumped it in the swamp.
I see.
That's why it's called burnt swamp.
Well, that would make sense, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Do you ever go down there?
No, well, I've been down there when I was a kid, but it's all growing up now.
It's still swamp, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's swamp.
It flows from Austin Farms. It flows into the Hummock Pond watershed, head of Hummock Pond, through a network of ditches that are all over the place. We used to play when we were kids all over here, all over this whole area.
So this was where you grew up?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome to still be in the same house, huh?
Yeah.
Now, your dad was kind of a character.
Kind of.
Tall?
He was tall.
Right, like you.
Sure.
How tall was he?
He was 6'6". I'm 6'8". And he rode crew in college, and he really bulked up when he was a teenager. And then he was a construction guy for years. He ran a construction company from 1970 to 1981. He built 11 houses. He built one house per year. And then he started to be a construction consultant. He was an engineer by training. And he did a lot of sizing beams, and he would figure out, roof tolerances of widows' walks, and what the weight could be on the roof and all that stuff. And he worked as the clerk of the works for the high school and elementary school projects in 1989 and 90 and 91 when they rebuilt the high school. Now it's called owner representative, but in those days it was called clerk of the works.
Right.
So he did all the overseeing of the contractor. I think it was Carlson Corporation who built the high school and the pool and everything. And he was the guy who would test concrete. He would make sure that the town had everything done to their specs. And he did that. And I went to college on that job.
Did you?
He paid for my college on that job.
How many kids are in your family?
2.
Yeah.
Me and my older sister.
Okay, is she still here?
No, she's been in Vermont for many, many years.
Oh, interesting.
Raising her family.
Interesting.
Yeah, she's a Vermonter. She went to Putney.
Oh, she did.
She fell in love with Vermont.
I know Putney, sure.
Yeah.
I grew up in Vermont when I was a kid.
She absolutely fell in love with Vermont. She's been gone for about...
Do you see much of her?
Yeah, not as much as anymore.
No.
Since my mom's gone.
I see. Now,
looking
was
good.
your dad into politics and stuff too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's where you get it from, right? I mean, a little bit?
Of course, a lot of it.
Right.
Both parents were very active.
They were.
Right, their whole lives. And I started seeing it. I started seeing stuff at the Vietnam War when I was a kid. I remember specifically dumping the helicopters off the decks of the aircraft carriers to get more people on when they were evacuating Saigon.
You saw that.
I saw that.
Well,
that was my first real memory.
How did your father influence
My
you?
father and mother were very active forever, their whole lives, on all kinds of things.
Liberals.
Oh yeah, they were liberals, Democrats.
Yep, liberal Democrats. Yep.
They taught me an awful lot. My father served on a lot of boards and commissions and committees for years.
Did he?
He was a select board member for one term.
Yep.
At Concom, Land Bank. he was
I
involved.
remember him.
He was involved
Oh, sure.
with the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee way
Right.
back with Matt Fee. They were on the same committee
Yeah,
together.
gosh.
And he did all kinds of volunteer work, and he was kind of a strong individual type. He liked to come home and play with his toy tractors, his antique tractors.
He did.
He didn't want to spend a lot of time out and about, but he did spend a lot of time in meetings and boards. So
Okay, and
it was an interesting mix. He
was a mix.
He was a public servant, like a lot of people are here, but he liked to come home and have his privacy too. He liked to come home and tinker with his little Ford 8N tractor.
Why do you think he liked being involved in local politics and
I think he liked to try to influence people for what he thought was right. He had a really good sense of right and wrong. You know what I mean?
Did he? Yeah.
And my mother did too. And my mother wasn't as active on boards and committees. She was very busy teaching kindergarten. For
I see.
many years.
She did. Yes.
And she put a lot of effort into that. She would do her lesson plans and prep. And she'd get up in the morning and go in early and prep the room. And she was and it was really interesting with her because she was kind of shy and kind of quiet. But you get her up in front of a classroom, it was a whole different person. She had the act. She just knew how to control, for the most part, 25.
Was she your teachers too?
No. 25 kids.
Right. Jeez. So you went off to college, and what did you study?
I went to Greenfield Community College up in Greenfield first. I was a non-traditional student. I had taken some time off after high school and worked in construction and carpentry for about 5 years, residential mostly, frame to finish. And
Here?
No, off island.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I left in 1985 for a while.
Okay.
And I went to college from 88 to 92.
Okay.
And we came back in 1993. So we've been here ever since then. I studied American Studies, liberal arts at GCC, and then I
What do you think
studied
about that
education, human
degree?
services.
What do you think about a liberal arts degree?
Oh, I think it's great.
A lot of people
I think
don't
always-
understand it, though.
I think it'll open up doors.
I think so too.
I mean,
I think
you learn so much. I mean, you got to write papers, you got to take finals, you got to deal with stress.
but you also learn how to be a good citizen
Oh yeah,
because you have more balance in your life.
absolutely.
You understand things a little
Yeah,
better,
I
and
don't-
you can communicate them too.
I don't know what the kids are up to these days, though. There's a lot of challenging things that are different than when I was in college. There was no internet when I was in college.
right. I
Nothing.
remember
You
those
had to go to the library. And
Do you
look
know
up-
why
look
I
things
drove
up.
you over here?
Because of that, maybe. That big spider.
Carl, you're right.
That,
You're
did you
like
drive
this.
me over here because of that thing that's turning right now?
Yeah. Because that's one of the reasons why we went for a ride.
Because we're going to
isn't
take a little conversation about that thing there.
it? That thing. What do you think about that thing? That thing never stops moving almost. I mean,
it's,
honestly.
I think it's.
How often does that run? Do you know?
I think it's running a lot.
I'd say 80% of the time it's running.
They prototyped that particular machine in Alaska at military bases where they didn't have any grid.
That's right.
And they put it through the paces in the Arctic, and that's a tough little machine. And you know what's interesting about it? It's almost halfway through its life. It went in 2010.
I did a piece on it when
Probably
it came
20 to 25 years for that thing, and then they'll have to decommission it or repower it.
Well, what do you think? I mean, I don't
think
hear
it's
anybody
great.
complaining.
I think it's
Is
great.
anybody
I mean,
complaining that you know of?
Well, some people complain about it. You can hear it around a little bit.
Well, yeah, we do all the games here.
Yeah.
But we're never
But
affected by it.
not
when we
really.
do our games.
I really wish it was over at the original location, more behind the stadium, but that thing is interesting because its capacity factor has been better than they thought. It's generating more power than they thought.
So what is it doing, Carl? What is it doing for the school?
It's sort of co-powering the high school. It's behind the meter at the high school, so it's helping the high school.
It's helping the high school.
It's doing, 25% of their power. And that is a stall regulated machine, Gino. That means the blades are not computer controlled for pitch. So there's a little bit of noise because they're fixed.
Right.
They don't get computer controlled to pitch into the wind properly.
Right.
Those are pitch controlled are quieter than stall regulated. Pitch regulated are quieter. That one's a stall regulated.
Well, they probably
Another
didn't have
thing that's
pitch.
interesting about that too is when that blade passes in front of that tower for a split second, it's a sound pressure wave. That's why you hear a thump, because it's a little pressure wave when that blade passes in front of the tower.
Right. So what about now?
There's the hardware right there. See that little inverter there, whatever that thing is, and there's the power boxes.
Oh, it is, yeah.
That's where it goes, right in there.
It goes right there.
That's the grid for the high school, right there. That's where they get their heavy utilities from National Grid, right there with that transformer. So they rigged this thing right in there. And then juices the high school, anything the high school doesn't use, which probably never because it's a 100 kilowatt machine. But this thing has a big electricity draw, this high school.
I bet.
Probably in the top 5 of the whole island. So the more they save, the more they save the taxpayers on the electric bill.
Well, of course. and we're not, Carl. I mean, come on, please.
Well, hey,
you got to get this thing going.
You want to talk shop? Let's talk shop. I mean, I don't mind talking shop.
You and I were
taking a ride.
You and I, that's right. Now, when you and I started talking a lot, it was Cape Wind. Tell me about your interest in wind technology and how all that started.
Well, it kind of got started with Cape Wind 18 or 19 years ago, so I put in a lot of time with Cape Wind. I was disappointed to see it go down. But they had 3.6 megawatt GE units, which they originally were going to do, and that's a 440 foot tall machine to the top of the blade, and it had a gearbox. Gearboxes are really not that popular anymore offshore, because if they break down, you got to go out there with a ship and fix them or remove them with a crane and go get them fixed or replaced. Mm-hmm. So what they're all doing now is direct drive, which is like that machine is direct drive. There's no gearbox in that turbine at the high school.
Right.
The generator sits right behind the rotor.
Right.
So you got that, eliminated all that problem.
Right.
You don't have to change the oil in it. You don't have to mess around with the gearbox.
Right.
You don't want to have gearboxes 25 miles out in the ocean, right?
No.
So the Mitsubishi Heavy Industries / Vestas machine that Vineyard Wind is looking at is direct drive. No gearbox, no mess, right?
Yep.
And that's a huge machine, 9.5 megawatts to 10 megawatts.
Explain what that means. People hear megawatts, they don't understand what it means.
Well, I'll tell you what it means.
For a house.
A house uses 500 kilowatt hours a month. Okay, that's like a light bulb. A kilowatt hour is a 100-watt light bulb burning for 24 hours or whatever it is. I'm not really sure.
Okay, so
but if you look at megawatts, here's a rule of thumb that people can relate to, right? Say you have 1 megawatt and a machine has a 4 megawatt rating. 1 megawatt will power 1 million watts, will power basically 1,000 homes. So if you have a 4 megawatt turbine, you're powering 4,000 homes.
Gosh.
So if you have a 9.5 or a 10 megawatt offshore machine, you can power 10,000 homes. You're going to see it in the press that it's a little less than that, but the real rule of thumb is 1 million watts will do 1,000 homes and businesses.
And that's 1 megawatt.
That's
a mega
1 megawatt.
Is a million.
Right, and a gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts.
Oh.
Those guys out there, if they do 800 megawatts, that's 800,000 homes. And what you see from the press is about 450 to 500,000 homes. It's actually higher than that. It's 1,000 homes per megawatt on average. And so if Vineyard Wind is 800, here's another way to look at it.
All right.
Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station in Plymouth is 650. And that's shutting down in weeks, literally. They're shutting it down June 1st, I think, finally, which is a good thing for all of us.
Why are they shutting it down?
Because it's just at the end of its life, and there's so much pressure to get out of it. Especially if the state develops offshore wind, they can juice the entire state.
So Pilgrim only produces 650?
Yeah, it's a GE Mark II reactor, like the one in Fukushima, unfortunately, which makes a lot of people nervous on the Cape and the Boston area, because that's one that had a big problem years ago.
Right.
GE made it. It's a very old, 40 or 50-year-old plant, and that machine does 650. So Vineyard Wind's 800. It's bigger than Pilgrim.
And it's just Vineyard Wind.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you build all the other ones out in that resource area, you got enough power for Rhode Island and Massachusetts and Connecticut. Period. For everything.
Wow.
So, and they're talking about bringing in power from Maine and Quebec to Boston on some power lines. You may have seen that in the news. But it's not necessary if they fully develop the Mass Resource Area, which is 735,000 acres out there. And when they started, it was going to be even bigger. It was going to go all the way around the island. It was like millions of acres. But the fishermen got into it with them, and the government said, okay, we'll chop it down to what it is now. And other companies have successfully bid and gotten tracts out there. Like Statoil has like Mayflower or whatever it is. Statoil is a massive Norwegian oil company, right?
Yeah.
So they're getting interested in wind. They're interested in floating offshore wind in Norway because it's so deep off the coast. And another exciting thing right now is California is really
floating.
California is getting into floating because they're deep in the Pacific Ocean. They can't do shallow water there with monopoles and jackets. It's too deep.
Is that better for the environment if it's floating?
It doesn't really make much of a difference because the construction situation. I mean,
once you build it,
it sits there for 25 years, doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But the construction has noise and it has disturbance, but it's only for a set period of time that it's done.
Right.
And it sits there for 25 years generating power. So.
And from what, there's a bunch of concerns. People are watching this. The naysayers, again, are going to have their voice.
They do. They have a powerful voice here.
What are they saying? What is their concern mostly?
Well, that brings us to the town and the town's concerns that have been voiced in the press last week. The energy coordinator has a lot of questions. She's sort of turning into the spokesperson for this whole thing. What they have is this National Historic Landmark thing that they're working on.
Yeah.
They're trying to get BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, to take notice, and they have. I think they've released some comments that says it is going to affect the National Historic Landmark status. But you got to remember, the only argument that the town has against Vineyard Wind is this National Historic Landmark status with the Department of Interior. Mm-hmm. Because they don't have any other valid arguments against the project.
I think that,
in my opinion.
Have you talked to the town?
I have.
According to what I looked into, the idea here is to hold our cards a little closer to our chest here and see what we're going to get from this.
But look, you can't ask a developer to pay for everything on the island.
I know.
Except the kitchen sink.
I agree.
What are they going to do? Pay for everything?
Exactly.
Are they going to pave our roads? Are they going to pay for the school buildings? You can't ask a developer to do that.
I mean, the bottom line is, what are we doing to get ourselves on the right track environmentally?
Right.
We're not going in the right direction.
I think that a lot of rich property owners, and I'm going to say this, and I take responsibility for saying this.
Sure.
There's a lot of very wealthy property owners on the South Shore, from Matticat to Mycomet and beyond, who don't want to look at it. And this is the same problem we had in Cape Cod.
I know.
Everybody knows that.
Sure.
So you're not going to really hear that in the press. You're not going to really see it at the select board meetings or from the energy coordinator. But what's happening is these people are emailing and phone calling the select board, the energy coordinator, town manager, the planning and land use services director, the deputy director of planning, and they're all shouting and saying, "You got to kill this thing because we don't want to look at it."
Oh, come on. Give me a break.
That's very possible. Now, I'll tell you, that's an educated guess from me, having 18 years of education.
There's no doubt about it.
I will guess
of course
that
it is.
The property owners do not want to look at it.
Of course it is.
The town has no legitimate arguments against Vineyard Wind, except now they're latching on to this National Historic Landmark status. I have a few things to say about that.
Okay.
What about the hospital building with the chimney sticking up? Is that to scale with a National Historic Landmark? There's a Stop and Shop building, which I voted for, by the way, in the planning board. Is that scaled to Nantucket? Is the public safety facility scaled to an historic landmark?
What about the public school?
Is the intermediate school buildings, is that scaled to a National Historic Landmark?
Right.
I think it's up for debate.
Sure.
I mean, look at Richmond. When they get going on Old South Road with a turning lane, that's 94 homes and 256 apartments and 14 buildings. Is that scaled to the National Historic Landmark? Did anybody cry about that?
Right.
Now they're crying about a wind farm that's 15 miles away.
Right.
And the only thing they have, this is the last time I'm going to say it, is this argument about the National Historic Landmark. That's all they've got.
Well,
and the town's officials,
let
me finish.
Okay, yep.
The town officials are getting bombarded with emails and phone calls. You got to kill this thing. It's going to kill us. It's like the big bad wolf or something. And it's so frustrating because you didn't want it in Nantucket Sound, and now you don't want it out there. So
it's not going to work.
And they all said, "Oh, if you put it further out, we'll accept it, but not in Nantucket Sound because it's too much traffic, boat and plane, wrong location,
You're talking
wrong
about
location,
Cape Wind. Yeah.
Okay, let's put it 25 miles out. Nope, can't have that. It's going to kill us all."
Well, back
what do you
then
want?
they had to have it closer because it wouldn't have been efficient enough to get to the. You need to be closer to the mainland.
Well, I can tell you something about that. They're going to use DC cables. They're not using AC cables, Gino.
Even back then, they were going to use DC.
The cables that connect the island to the mainland grid are alternating current cables. They need to use direct current cables when they're that far out to transport to the grid.
Right.
So that's all set. They can do DCs, and they don't have the loss of power.
Is there a reason why they're not further out, though? It's just too expensive at this point to put them even further out?
No, it's just where the government set up the lease areas.
Yeah.
And you know what the wind resource is like out there? Have you ever looked at a wind graph to find out in New England where the heaviest winds are? They're right out there.
They are.
The most dark color for wind is literally right out there.
Interesting.
You know what their capacity factors are going to be like? You know what a capacity factor is?
Tell us.
For those of us who don't know, the capacity factor is the amount of juice that you get out of a wind farm. Let's say it's 35% in Iowa, right? Mm-hmm. 35%. That means it's going to be a 35% capacity factor out of 100.
Right.
Which is okay. You want to have 50 or 60 for a really efficient power
And
plant.
when the wind isn't moving,
right,
too.
Round the clock. Everything. So you go out there to that wind resource area, that mass resource area, you're looking at 50, 60, 65 to 70% capacity factor. That wind is blowing all the time. And you know what's really cool about it? It comes up in the afternoon from the southwest in the summertime when everybody's cranking up their air conditioners here.
Right.
Perfect timing.
Yep.
Juice the whole place.
Right.
Right?
So what do we know about, but that energy must be used, and we'll use it when we...
Well, it'll go.
Once it's in the grid.
Here's another way, for those of you out there who don't understand this. When Vineyard Wind...
So you want to complain
now, you're not going to see much in this.
How often is it foggy out here, too?
Well, you think?
Right? So are you going to see it when it's foggy?
No.
Of course not.
You're not. It's 15 miles. That's more than twice the curvature of the Earth. The curvature of the Earth is 7 miles. Right?
Where is this? Yeah, there. I usually pull in there.
That's a good spot.
That's a good spot to be on the...
Because you're, what, about 10 feet up or 15 feet up?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I might be able to go to another spot. But
I don't know where these people are out here, but they're panicking.
I wouldn't... Panicking? This area? Okay.
Okay, wait a minute now. Okay. Look at this.
Yeah.
You see this?
Yeah, hang on.
You see that the stilt house is gone?
Yes.
Gino?
Yes, I do.
You know why? You know why this pond filled in with sand? You want to take a crack at it? Global warming.
Of course.
Right there.
Right there. That's it.
You got an issue with it? Look at that.
Yeah. That's just the beginning.
That's just the beginning. Wait till this bridge washes away. Then how are these people going to get to their houses?
Right.
Select board going to have that.
Look at all this sand.
That is climate change. That is a powerful storm that did that in one day.
Wow.
We are having more powerful storms.
And that's not a hurricane.
Nope. That's just a nor'easter.
Okay.
More powerful storms, rising sea levels, and coastal flooding. Right there. There's no pond left, and there's no stilt house left. Look at that, how close that is.
I know it. That's amazing.
That's it.
That's it.
You can't deny that.
No.
You know?
It's coming.
It's already here,
I don't know,
Gino.
Carl.
It's not coming. It's already here.
Is it worth it for these poor folks out here? I mean,
hey,
can you imagine?
These people are entitled to access. They pay taxes, right?
Sure.
The town has to provide access to them because they pay tax bills.
Well, they'll just build another bridge.
They'll have to do some kind of bridge or a boat system or something. Maybe a little chappy ferry like on the
But what
Vineyard.
happens, Carl? Let's talk about global warming for a second. What happens to Nantucket? Should we know it's coming. We haven't been hit with a really bad storm in years.
Well, we had those 6 bomb cyclones the winter
I'm talking
before this
about
one.
a storm,
Well,
though.
we're due.
We're due for a major storm.
We're due for like a category 3 to 4. We're due for a big one. Well,
Okay.
Superstorm Sandy that hit New Jersey and New York. That was the worst one they've seen in years. 2012 or whatever it was. Superstorm Sandy was no joke.
what? Getting back to these people here, who's going to complain? I can't even get to the beach to see these things.
On a clear day, Gino, you can't see 200 feet ahead of us.
I know. I don't know what they're talking about here.
And then you have the summer haze. And my wife wrote a letter about it. She said you can't see the thing from April to October. There's too much haze and there's too much fog. But let's talk about global warming a little bit.
Okay, sure.
Let's talk about how the town is going to spend trillions on coastal resiliency and adaptation.
I know.
When we told them
trillions.
of taxpayer money, we told them 20 years ago to start building wind farms everywhere.
Yeah.
And switch to renewables that are clean. And you know what else we need to do with transportation? We need to get electric and diesel hybrid and diesel electric and charge cars from renewables.
Yes.
You know, and Nantucket's a great place for electric cars. You don't drive anywhere.
Right.
And the modern ones, you have a longer cruising range.
Yes.
You can use it for a month. And
Well, the future is definitely in electric.
EVs.
Yes.
And Tesla's off to a roaring start.
Now, what about the battery technology? Are you keeping up with that technology?
Sure. I mean, they got
Where are we?
lithium ion is really coming along.
But storage. Let's say we were able to store that wind.
Yeah,
energy.
that's
Would that be unbelievable?
It would be very helpful.
Oh.
I mean, you could juice around the clock.
You could.
You know, in Europe, they take Danish wind energy into Scandinavia, and they pump water up mountains and then run it down through turbines during peak periods. So.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Well,
could do that out west.
Why are they doing it and we're not? What is it about our country?
Do you want the short answer or the long answer? They're both. The fossil fuel industry is so powerful here.
It really comes down to the.
Look at our
lobbyists.
president.
Yeah.
Look at our president pulled out of Paris.
Yeah.
Pulled out of the Paris Accord. And then who's his buddies? Big polluters. Big oil, big gas, big coal, and big nuclear. Although nuclear is kind of dying, but people are like, oh, that doesn't have any global warming emissions. Well, what about the waste? What are they going to do with all the waste in the pool at Pilgrim?
I know.
They got to put it in casks and bury it.
Yep. They're going to have to send it out west. Yep.
If that pool catches on fire, it's all over, like Fukushima.
Oh.
And the whole Boston area gets contaminated.
Man.
And that's bad.
So that's it. It comes down to that. And the economies, right? I mean,
well,
the fact is that
you and I know how many lobbyists are on K Street for all kinds of industries. But look, who's got the grip on the Congress and the president? The fossil fuel industry. Who lives on Nantucket Island against wind farms? Who has their stock portfolio in the fossil fuels and nuclear? Just an educated guess. Where are all these guys making their money in their stock market in fossil fuels?
But what about the people in Europe? They're making money too. I mean, I see them all over the world vacationing all the time. What is going on with them? Where do they get their money?
I don't know, but who gives the Koch brothers so much power?
Certain politicians, I guess, right?
I mean, the Koch brothers, William Koch, crushed Cape Wind.
Oh, yeah.
He litigated it to death because he didn't want to look at it and sail amongst the towers.
Right.
So, who gave 3 men, Charles, David, and William, the power to run this country? And why don't the Koch brothers get into renewables? They can make money. They want to make money in the energy business. They're the biggest polluters in the world.
Right.
With petroleum coke and mining problems and fines and violations from the EPA. They're horrible. But look, guys, you can make money in wind because wind is on land. It's competitive.
I heard
it's cheaper than natural gas now.
I heard a statistic just the other day in London, in England, on Sky News. They did a poll where zero carbon emission and what it would take. And they said that the poll, 50% of the people would not want it to affect their lifestyle.
Right.
They were not willing to do what needed to be done to
But-
get to that level that we all know we need to go. Isn't that amazing? 50%.
You listen to Jim Henson, right? The guy who's been blowing the whistle on global warming for 20 years. He's the guy that people don't want to hear what he has to say about global warming. We don't want to talk about tar sands oil production in Canada, what that does. With the Keystone Pipeline that President Trump wants to fast track, he wants to avoid the courts. Do you know what's going to happen if they take all that tar sands out of those forests and knock down all the forests? And they burn it all?
Carbon.
The carbon?
Release the carbon, yes.
And
That's trapped in there, yes, right.
And you know what the situation with global warming is that we have 10 years left, Gino. If we don't shut down, this is serious. And this is for the kids that are watching, the teenagers, you're watching this. You guys have already walked out of school once globally in 100 countries to protest what adults are not doing about global warming. Here's a hats off to the kids. They're taking leadership roles.
Well,
it's their future.
Of course it is.
But look, here's what you got to do. You got to shut down every single coal-fired power plant worldwide within 10 years, or else it's going to be too late.
That's right. That's one thing. There's a bunch, though, right?
And transportation, like I'm saying, transportation is a big polluter.
So is
It's
agriculture.
not just
Right.
It's not just energy production. So we got to do everything at once.
Yeah.
And the Congress, there's so much denial amongst powerful people. The president.
It seems like the young people seem to have a grasp on it, and the older ones
young
don't.
people are canaries in the coal mine, Gino.
Yeah. But
I'm a canary in the coal mine. I've been yelling and pissing about offshore wind energy as my specialty for 20 years.
Yeah.
And this island's washing away. Look at what we just drove by. It's happening already. When I worked at the steamship, we had to raise the base of the bridges a foot. You know why? Because of sea level rise. The trucks couldn't get over the top of the bridge onto the freighters because they were too steep. So they had to raise the base of the bridges, Gino.
You know,
they have a tidal station right there.
I don't think you're going to save Nantucket. Honestly, I don't think there's any way to save it totally. At least this part, I hate to say it, but I think this part is going to get hit first.
Yeah.
This is the place.
Well, some parts are part of the North Atlantic Ocean.
What happens to property values if this gets wiped out?
There isn't enough property to wipe out.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. So what happens? What happens to property in town?
Jesus, I'm going to be having waterfront property at Burn Swamp Lane, man. A lot quicker than usual.
Well,
I'll be dead.
Yeah, you'll be dead. Listen,
this is just.
I'm going to have to say goodbye to you now.
Okay.
And thank you. I'm not going to drop you off here, though. I'm going to drive you home.
I'll walk back. I'll go up on top of that dune, see if I can see a wind farm.